there was originally people could buzz in whenever they wanted. And Alex changed the rule so that you had to wait for him to finish reading the clue to buzz in.
Yeah.
So that made it easier for him as the host, but it also made it easy for all of us at home to play along.
So we have gotten you on some podcasts, Inside Jeopardy. Loved hearing you there. What has
Yeah.
inspired you to go all in with This is Jeopardy, the story of America's favorite quiz show?
Well, Inside Jeopardy is really about what's happening in Jeopardy right now. And I think one of the things that is really exciting and interesting for people is like, how did Jeopardy become this institution, this beyond a pop culture phenomenon, right? It's something that is generation to generation is part of people's lives, part of people's everyday. And it's like, how did what began as sort of another game show become this thing that people are so invested in, people love? And so we really go back and we look at some major inflection points. We tell stories that people haven't heard before. And what's great about it, because we're partnered with Jeopardy on it, we have access to the people who were actually there making it happen. And so it's just been an incredible experience to share the story of this show from the very beginning through the years and, kind of how we got to where we are today. And that really creates so much more context for where the show could go.
Oh, exciting. Now, how is this? How are we organizing this? Are we starting at the way beginning and then coming up to present day?
It's not exactly chronological, and we're kind of touching on some different key touch points. The first episode is really about how did this show come about? But then from there, we bounce around. We talk about, how Jeopardy came back. Jeopardy was canceled twice. And then the 1984 version with Alex Trebek, that is sort of what we think of as Jeopardy, was sort of the second reboot. It had a new host. So we have a whole episode about how that came about. We talk about, Ken Jennings, but then we also dive into some of the details of the show, like how does writing for Jeopardy work? We have a whole episode where we follow the writers and the researchers who make the content and aren't just involved beforehand, but are very involved while the show is taping and handling rulings. We go into the buzzer and how that all works. There's an episode where we follow a group of contestants through one entire tape day. So to kind of give you the idea is like, we all see a 20-minute, 22-minute version of Jeopardy that is done, but there's not only history and time stretching back to 1964 that goes into those 20 minutes, but there's also so much of people creating it, contestants, hosts, editors, all these people who are part of making that 20 minutes so special. And we kind of unpack each of those in a deeper way. We follow some, famous contestants. We have a whole episode about Ken's run. Obviously, you can't, it's such a touch point. We talk to some other, big, famous, well-known contestants like Amy Schneider and many others. We are really just trying to create a coherent and cohesive look at what is the Jeopardy legacy.
I am so excited to dive into all of this. Is there an episode or something that you dove into that was your particular favorite?
We did an episode which I think was really fun and sort of unexpected, which was we looked at all the people that Ken beat in his 74 games. Imagine you're spending your whole life excited to get on Jeopardy, studying, and then you have the ill fortune of being up against the greatest Jeopardy player of all time. And it was really interesting to see how people dealt with that, how that felt, how that was for Ken, how that was for them, how they've all created a community among themselves. And so that was sort of an interesting thing, which I don't, you all know, right? If Ken won 74 games, he beat 148 people, but we don't really think about those 148 people as part of his story. So it was kind of fun to unpack that.
Oh, I'm really excited for that one. That one sounds super interesting. And obviously, you have such a history with the show. You've been at it in so many different angles, host, contestant, champion, all that jazz. Was there anything that surprised you even as you looked into it and did a little bit more research?
Oh, yeah. I'm every episode that we're recording, I'm learning stuff. Especially the early version. I grew up with the Alex Trebek version. So hearing about, the controversy when Alex became the host, that people didn't think he was serious enough. Alex had a reputation as sort of a game show host, and he was kind of like suave and sexy and, doing that kind of person. And so people thought he wasn't this, Art Fleming was really kind of professorial and a little more serious. And so for me, Alex Trebek is Jeopardy forever, and so the idea that there was a period of time where that wasn't the case, and Alex and the people at Jeopardy had to work to help get people on board with that was really interesting to hear about.
Oh, interesting. And was that kind of an interesting mirror with, after Alex's passing, having to bring in this new generation of Jeopardy and finding, a new host? It seems like there was a similar kind of a cultural shift going on with the show.
Well, I think all of this speaks to how important the show is to people and how much it's more than just a game show, that people care enough to care about who hosts it. I mean, what other game show are you like, this person is not fit to host it, right? Like there might be people you think are good or bad, but the idea that somebody is or is not, an appropriate person to carry on this institution really, hasn't happened in any other capacity other than, the nightly news, right?
Right. What is it about Jeopardy to you that inspires such loyalty, such fierce loyalty amongst viewers?
Well, I think a big part of it is the content, right? I think people have, Alex always said the contestants are the stars. And I think to some extent that's true, but I really think the clues are the stars of the show. And if there's one thing that we've learned now, going from Art Fleming to Alex Trebek and now Ken and Mayim, it's like the show is great, kind of whoever's hosting the show is still great. And I think a lot of that has to do with how great the clue writing is and the volume of clues that you get in a show. There are very few shows that you get 61 clues in basically a half an hour show. That is, really, really breakneck speed. And to have it feel so effortless really speaks to like the magic of the Jeopardy format. And I think that there's something for everyone. If other shows where if you're on a clue that, a show that moves slower, if it's a category or clue that you're not interested in, you're tuning out. Whereas Jeopardy, it's like, all right, I don't know anything about nuclear submarines, but I know a ton about, operas. And I know that whatever, there's only a couple, one fraction of the board is the nuclear submarines and the rest of it is the stuff that I care about. And I think it's also a great play at home experience beyond that, because one of the things we talk about, and this is a really great episode and really speaks to how much Alex contributed. The first couple of seasons of the show, Alex was also a producer. And there was originally people could buzz in whenever they wanted. And Alex changed the rule so that you had to wait for him to finish reading the clue to buzz in. So that made it easier for him as the host, but it also made it easy for all of us at home to play along, because the super brainiacs who are on the show might know it right away, but the rest of us at home need to hear the whole clue. And so it's like little things like that really make the show such a good experience. And it's really the writers and everybody. Yes, it's about the contestants' experience on the stage, but it's all really focused on all of us watching at home. And I think that is what has made it so, given it such longevity.
Yeah, absolutely. We are another contestant at home, even if we can't quite buzz in.
And there's nothing better than getting one from the couch that the people on stage did not get. I mean, there are a few feelings as empowering as that.
It's so true. Now, obviously, you've got a broader perspective on Jeopardy than most people out there, but did this podcast broaden it or shift your perspective on the game in any way?
Absolutely. And I think what has been really fun about this is because I have a contestant perspective, a little bit of a hosting perspective, and, first and foremost, a fan perspective, and I can bring that to bear. So it's not just a reportage on, a Wikipedia page
Yeah.
of Jeopardy, but we can also, we're interviewing the people who were there, and I can say, well, for my point of view, when I showed up at my first day as a contestant, I was totally scared, and and then we get to hear from other contestants as well, and so I have an opportunity to help bring people in without it being like the Buzzy story, but because I have these kind of three main touch points, I think it's really helped us kind of bridge this and help people get into it. And I think one of the great things about this that I'm really excited about too is if there are people out there who do not get Jeopardy, which there might still be, I haven't found them yet.
Yeah.
But it's like, why is this show such a big, it's an interesting pop culture television entertainment phenomenon. It goes all the way back to the origin of the show goes all the way back to the quiz show scandal of the 50s and the getting in trouble for giving answers. And Merv Griffin's wife said, let's do a show where we give him the answers.
Yeah.
It was sort of like playing on that. Right. And so, for people who are just interested in that thing, there's a lot of amazing stories about, Lucille Ball being a part of Jeopardy coming back, and Alex Trebek getting the hosting show. Weird Al is involved, and what's there, it intersects with so many other things, like when Oprah Winfrey started her syndicated show, she had the same syndicator as Jeopardy and Wheel, which had just become big hits. So all of a sudden, the success of Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune helped bring Oprah across the, you couldn't make it up. It's just like, and so, yeah, it's just an incredible and special thing to be a part of and get to, share more of. So there's something for people who don't know anything about the show. There's something for people who are huge fans like myself to get to hear executive producers and writers really dig into, what was the feeling like on stage when Ken Jennings wasn't losing? Like, it was exciting, but there was also a panic, like, oh shit, what are we going to do? This guy's not losing. So, and we forget about that because we all know that he eventually lost. Right.
Right. We see
really
the
great
moments behind the scenes. Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah. It's really cool.
Now you've got, it sounds like a ton of interviews, ton of guests. Was there one that stood out to you as when you were doing it, or maybe when you're hearing it back, you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to stand out as one of the best of the series?
There are some people that make appearances that are, I think, really special to the show that may not be, we all know, Alex and Ken and maybe Harry Friedman, who is the longtime executive producer of the show, Michael Davies, who's now the executive producer of the show. But there are people who have been on the, Rocky Schmidt, who's been on the show for a long, long time. But they also interviewed, Sandy and Renee, who were the hair and makeup people for Alex for 20 years, and they were there with him every day, when he had knee surgery, when he was going through his cancer treatment, and they really got to know him in a different way than almost anybody else, other than his family. Maggie Speak, who was the contestant producer for many, many years, who was, is still considered by contestants who were there when she was as like, an incredible part of their journey. So getting to share, these people's perspectives, I was really excited that it wasn't necessarily just like, okay, here's the producer, here's the writer, here's the producer, here's the writer, here's the manager, here's the TV executive, blah, blah, blah. But like really the people who were on the ground making these shows and experiencing the changes and trying to figure out with everybody else, like, how do we keep going in this moment, or how do we stay relevant? It was really, really, those were the ones that I was most excited to hear about.
I mean, leave it up to the Jeopardy people to be really thorough with a podcast, but I'm super excited to listen to this one. It sounds like it's going to be really fun.
Yeah. No, it's been a blast.
Is there anything else that you want people to know before the podcast goes live and they have a chance to listen to it themselves?
Podcast goes live April 26th, everywhere that you get your podcast. And I, definitely subscribe. And like I said, we go into so many topics that there's really something for everyone. If you think you know everything about Jeopardy, you do not. And this is how you're going to find it out. If you know nothing about Jeopardy and you want to impress people, this is how you're going to do it. So really, there's something for everyone. And I just can't wait to hear how people respond and as we continue to make these, seeing what people are really excited about so we can kind of dive into some of that as well.
Awesome. I am so excited for this deep dive. Thank you for taking us on this journey.
Absolutely. Thank you.